Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Table. I am your host and your only host today. Luke is off. He's celebrating, having a great time. Happy holidays, everyone. Hopefully, you have made it to the championship game of fantasy football, week 17, second to last week of the NFL regular season. That's when most of everybody has their championship week. I am in the championship in one of my leagues. Sadly, I'm in like six others, all lost. But let's get right to the news. First of all, it's gonna be a quick one since I'm going to be the only one here. But hopefully, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns about your championship team, or possibly keepers in Dynasty or any other questions, let us know in the comments. With the first news today, it's a big one. Derek Carr has been benched for Jason Stidham. Or is it Jarrett Stidham? Jarrett Stidham, my bad. Jarrett Stidham's never started an NFL game before in his career. This is going to be a very interesting development for people who somehow survived with Devontae Adams in their starting lineup, despite these past poor weeks of play. So if you do have him in your line, he should be around a flex play, I'd assume. I mean, that's what he's been for the last couple of weeks. And now, unfortunately, you have this quarterback who is only throwing the ball like a couple times in a couple games, hasn't started. It's going to be very interesting to see how that offense operates, especially with Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs has brought a lot of teams to a number one seed, I assume. And unfortunately, you're not going to have the high ceiling that he has provided all season for. Next news, we have Mike Vrabel, head coach for Tennessee Titans, is basically sitting everyone today, Thursday night versus the Cowboys. So what we have right now of who is out, Ryan Tannehill, starting quarterback. This was assumed last week that he was not going to be playing for the rest of the season. He might pop up back in the playoffs, but if they make the playoffs, their most important game right now is Week 18 versus Jacksonville Jaguars. And so this game, win or lose, does not matter for their seeding or playoff position. And it's a short week. So Vrabel is taking all of his chances he can get to get his guys healthy. And sort of like the Derek Carr situation where you have the guy at the helm making decisions and impacting everyone on fantasy, Vrabel's taking that role and he's demolishing fantasy seasons, especially for Derrick Henry owners. Derrick Henry has been playing great in the late stretch, as he always does, but now he's doubtful. They didn't officially list him as out. It's most likely he's not going to be playing. So the next man up is Hassan Haskins. Hassan Haskins is a must pick up right now. Dontrell Hilliard is on IR, and Haskins has been the only other running back to get a carry in the last 2 weeks, other than Derrick Henry. Other players that have been out or listed as out are Jeffrey Simmons, the star defensive lineman, Armani Hooker, Bud Dupree, Zach Cunningham, Dylan Cole, and the other doubtfuls are Christian Fulton and Danico Autry. Those are some big names, if not like the biggest names on the Tennessee Titans. And it's going to be a rough one against the Cowboys. This Cowboys is a star-studded cast, and they're going to want to win because that's just who they are, their nature. They want to have a better seed in the playoffs. They want to compete. That's who they are. That's their identity. Titans, even though I wouldn't say it's too much of their identity, but they're playing it safe. It's what they should be doing. But unfortunately, looks like we're not going to be having Derrick Henry. Colt McCoy is starting versus the Atlanta Falcons after Trace McSorley took Tom Brady to overtime. He unfortunately lost. He only got DeAndre Hopkins 1 reception. Greg Dortch got 10 targets. It was all over the place fantasy-wise. No one could have possibly predicted it. Hopefully this brings back some consistency for us since Colt McCoy. We've seen a couple games from him already. We know the targets that he likes to get the ball to. And it's against the Falcons. The Falcons have a pretty poor defense, as has been for the past couple of years. So hopefully McCoy slings it back to DeAndre Hopkins, and DeAndre Hopkins owners who somehow survived last week, if they're in the championship or they're playing for third place, who knows? Hopefully Colt McCoy brings back some consistency and some stability and confidence in starting him back in your lineups. Another head coach news, not necessarily as stable as Vrabel. Nathaniel Hackett was fired the day after the Christmas blowout. Right now, the Broncos are saying that they're looking for someone who can possibly fix the offense, and what they mean by that is fix Russell Wilson. I don't know if they're going to find that soon. Right now, the head coaching pool is pretty. It's like very. I don't know how to describe it. Really, it's weird. I think weird is probably the best way to describe it. But let's focus on now, though. Let's focus on now. But for this championship game, and if somehow your season plays till week 18, the Broncos are they have been trying to find their identity since the beginning of the season. Now with their head coach fired, that just took one step back, and they will not have an identity for the rest of the season. It's going to be hard starting any Broncos player in fantasy with confidence. You could still play him like Sutton or Latavius Murray. You're going to still start him, but it's not going to be as confident as it once was. It never was confident to begin with, but now what they're going to be doing schematically, repetition, it's up in the air. And I think for a championship game, you don't really want to risk that, especially with how stagnant their offense can be. Moving on, Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts both missed practice. Jalen Hurts was projected to start this week since the Eagles could not pull it out in the win versus the Cowboys last week. So Minshew did have a great performance. I thought Nick Foles, it was like between me, it was Nick Foles and Gardner Minshew as the waiver wire pickup. Hopefully you got Minshew. I thought it was going to be Foles. I thought Foles was going to show up against that Chargers defense and provide a slightly different spark than a stable Matt Ryan, but that offensive line, the separation from the Colts wide receivers, it did not help Nick Foles at all. But kind of sorry for sorry for getting out of touch with the topic I'm trying to talk about right now. Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, both out. Lamar Jackson, he has missed. He's always been news reports have always been missed practice. Okay, he might play, is going to be out for this Sunday. And that's what it's been. I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to be playing. If he does play, it's against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think, for one, an option off, if you have him, I'm pretty sure a lot of Lamar Jackson owners have him. I might be speaking for myself, but it kind of happened around the same time with Jared Goff exploding, finding his rhythm in the Lions offense, and Lamar Jackson getting hurt and sitting out. Hopefully, if you have Jared Goff in your lineup, he's playing against the Bears, I would start him over Lamar Jackson. I feel like Jared Goff is a high chance to put up another top 5 performance. We'll talk about it later. Jalen Hurts, if he's not good to go, I know the Eagles, this is a must-win game for them. Must-win game as in clinching the NFC. I think if I'm going off my gut, I don't know him, but off the comments of what Nick Sirianni said, watching his press conference, I'm kind of confident in Jalen Hurts starting. I think he will start. And so if you suffered from him not starting and you're fighting for third place, hopefully you get your money back. And up next, another quarterback injury news. Tua Tagovailoa is in concussion protocol again. and Teddy Bridgewater has earned the start versus the Patriots. The Patriots have a pretty tough defense. Teddy Bridgewater, Bill Belichick has said that, quote unquote, Teddy Bridgewater has the same problems as Tua Tagovailoa. I'm not sure what probably like technicalities and stuff like that, how they fit in the offense, but in terms of the wide receivers that are in play, I think they take a slight step down. It's not going to be worthy to bench Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle or anything like that. Running backs, Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. It's a tough matchup already, and quarterbacks don't really matter, or they somewhat matter in terms of the efficiency of running backs, but not all too often. I think Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert will be fine. If I had to pick one, it'll probably be Jeff Wilson Jr. And here we have the next one. Oh, another quarterback news. Carson Wentz has earned the starting job for the Washington Commanders over Taylor Heinicke. Heinicke has not had his best performances in the last couple of weeks, and Ron Rivera has now decided that Carson Wentz gives them the best opportunity to reach the playoffs. I'm not so sure about this flip-flopping QB play that Ron Rivera and the Commanders are doing. I really hope that they would stick with Heinicke even through his slump. It kind of shows the indecisiveness of the Commanders and sort of encapsulates football, what it is right now in itself. It's like what Robert Saleh said, instant coffee. They try to find the instant success, or if a quarterback is failing for the past 2 weeks, they're going to pull him because he hasn't been good enough in the past. And so you're going to test out Carson Wentz, who hasn't been good enough in the past himself, which kind of brings me to a confusing point. I don't understand this move. And Taylor Heinicke has been giving Terry McLaurin solid numbers when he was starting, probably not for the last couple of weeks, but I'd be more confident with Heinicke coming in than Wentz. I'm really sure. I'm going to do a quick search on who the Commanders play. They play the Browns. The Browns don't have off the top of my head, the Browns don't have that strong enough defense as their roster says it does. The name on the roster, names on the paper do not equate to how the defense has been this season. I would wish Taylor Heinicke was playing this game. That's where I'll finish it off with. Another quarterback news. Wow, there are a lot. Mike White has been cleared to play. He's starting over Zach Wilson now. Mike White was clearly the best quarterback on the Jets roster. They're playing the Seattle Seahawks this weekend, and the Seattle Seahawks defensive secondary is pretty solid. Garrett Wilson and Corey Davis, and Elijah Moore, they're already going to have troubles against this defensive secondary, but Mike White elevates their floor for sure. And I'm feeling a little bit more confident throwing Garrett Wilson back into your lineup if you were scared with how Zach Wilson has played. Going on to, so that was the end of the news. I know I talked about this last week or a couple weeks ago with Luke. Teams that are playing for something this week are the teams that you are going to be happy to have in your lineup, or possibly kind of avoid picking up backups off the waiver wire. So you could save it for another team that isn't really playing for much, like Haskins, because Derrick Henry and the Titans, they aren't playing for much this week. Hassan Haskins has become the pickup this week. So here's some teams to avoid on the waiver wire in terms of backups, because their starters, if they're questionable, are most likely going to play. The Buffalo Bills, Cincinnati Bengals, Miami Dolphins, the New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Washington Commanders. If you have one of these players that they're on this team and they're most likely questionable, I would be confident in keeping them in my starting lineup.
Before we move on to our next segment, let me tell you a little bit more about our sponsor, Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a daily fantasy platform where it's just you versus the projections. You can pick more or less on many player projections that they have on any sport you watch. This includes like receiving yards, passing yards, rushing yards on like wide receivers, quarterbacks, and running backs, respectively. All you have to do is pick between 2 to 5 players, and you can win up to 10 times your entry. And that's not all. If you are a new sign on, you can receive a 100% deposit match up to $100 by using code Blue Stable. So if you deposit $10, they'll give you $10, which makes it $20. If you deposit $50, they'll also give you $50, making it $100. And if you do $100, the max, they'll also give you $100, giving you $200. Download Prize Picks today and play daily fantasy sports with us. Make sure to use code BLUESTABLE, BLUESTABLE, when you sign up. The link is down in the description below if you want to download today.
And I have a mini segment for this week. Don't worry. It's a couple shout out for players. I know Amon-Ra St. Brown was one of these players that closed out the fantasy season hot last season. And I want to shout out a couple of these players this season that did the same thing. First one, we have Cam Akers. Over the last 6 weeks, he has 383 rushing yards on 86 attempts, averaging 4.45 yards per carry, along with 6 touchdowns. Man, this dude went off on Christmas. He absolutely destroyed the Denver Broncos. 3 touchdowns over, it was like, what was it, 133 yards rushing, probably more. He's the guy now. He's the guy in Los Angeles. And this performance was the performance a lot of Cam Akers owners at the beginning of the season wished he is what they thought that he was going to be doing. This was his ceiling at the beginning of the season, and they sort of strayed away from that. But now with Baker Mayfield at the helm, the Rams are rolling, and Cam Akers looks better than he did before. I'm excited to see what his future is next year, as now the Rams finally realize who they have after the Achilles tear. I think he's in for a solid bounce back season next year. Next up, Jared Goff. I know I talked a little bit about Jared Goff and how hot he was getting recently. Jared Goff, in 3 of the last 4 weeks, Jared Goff finished in the top 5 quarterbacks. And now this week, he faces against a bottom barrel Bears defense. This is a great matchup. Even if you're questioning, like, if you have a quarterback that's sort of near the end of the bottom of the QB1 rankings, I'd throw in Goff. Goff has not thrown an interception in a long time. He's playing great. I don't know how you could keep his hot hand off the starting lineup. And to pair with that, DJ Chark has been going off with him as well. I don't have the stats in front of me, unfortunately, but I know he's had a couple top 20 finishes in the last 4 weeks. He's been a priority on all lineups. I mean, he should not be on the waiver wires on Championship Sunday. And even if he is, I'd pick him up and see if you could try putting him in the flex. He has been going absolutely crazy with Jared Goff. I love what he's doing. Him along with Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's going to be a wide receiver duo to worry about next year fantasy season, unless Jameson Williams takes that role. Next up, another wide receiver, Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith has 4 top 15 finishes in a row to close off this year. This was basically this year's Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't think Devontae Smith is getting talked enough about it, even with an alpha wide receiver 1 with A.J. Brown. This Devontae Smith, the Heisman winner, he's been everything the Eagles have wanted to be. He's producing. He is a safeguard wide receiver option for any quarterback, Gardner Minshew or Jalen Hurts, who is struggling, running, scrambling. He's going to be there. And at the end of the play, he is most likely going to be open. Devontae Smith has been closing off the season on a great note. And last but not least, I have Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox has climbed to tight end one status after the last few weeks in his touchdown in his performances. I believe he snagged in a couple of touchdowns, which I mean, we've been saying this all year. I'm sorry, we're kind of beating a dead horse here, but the tight ends this year have not been good. And with Dawson Knox this year, just a couple touchdowns at the end of the season brings him up to a tight end one status. So I'm proud of him. This is the growth that we would like to see with Dawson Knox, especially with Josh Allen, who so far in his NFL career has not been known to throw to the tight end often. But now with Dawson, he's using Dawson Knox quite a bit. Stephon Diggs' production has gone down during the last couple of weeks, but I'm excited to see what Dawson Knox becomes next year and where people rank him. He's going to be a very interesting case because you have I believe he's going to be around that Kyle Pitts range because Kyle Pitts wasn't used all too often this year. He's going to be scared away. It's going to be a big debate. I feel like the range of the Kyle Pitts and the Dawson Knoxes. Yeah, I'm already thinking about next fantasy season, even though there's a championship game we all got to play. But that's it for me. Sorry, I know it's a pretty quick one this week. No partner to ramble off with, just myself. But please like and subscribe right here. Don't know if it's the left or the right. Luke usually does this, so I'm pretty confident he'll get it right. And good luck to you all. Peace.